Hey everyone, it's Sherry with Squatchable, and today's report, you're gonna like this. A fisherman hooked a Bigfoot. It's not as crazy as it sounds. The report we're going to talk about today is BFRO report number 7382. It's a Class A sighting, and it's really interesting. It's got a behavior that we haven't really discussed before. It's talking about a Bigfoot swimming and it diving into the water as well. Where these sightings occurred was a fishing location called Beginner's Hole on Kalama River in Cowlitz County, Washington. It's a steelhead hotspot because it is below the fish hatchery that they are released from and returned to when the run happens. This area is very active. They've had 14 reports on BFRO, and 8 of those were Class A sightings in this county. These sightings occurred in the summertime of July 2001, and the occurrences all happened while night fishing after about 10 p.m. Now, the person who submitted the report used to own a bait and tackle store on the Kalama River in Kalama, Washington. Since his location was frequented by people who were fishing in the area, he had heard many stories of people having strange experiences at night along the river in the area. Among those stories, 2 particular ones were mentioned by the witness in the report because they occurred not too long before his own encounter. One couple described their car window being hit very hard by something at night, and another time, a terrified fisherman described seeing a 7-foot Bigfoot watching him walk from about 75 feet away. Eventually, the witness, he had his own encounter with his friend Travis while night fishing at Beginner's Hole. In fact, he had 3, but we'll talk about them as we go along. The witness and Travis arrived at Beginner's Hole around 10:30 p.m. He noticed further down the river in the area of the deep hole there was a lot of fish jumping. They decided to go down to the deep hole and fish from the shore, and here's what the witness said. Travis was located 50 feet below me behind a large bush when I heard a loud splash from his direction. Thinking he must have fallen in, I yelled to see if he was alright when to my surprise we were face to face and he was yelling for me to run in a very panicked voice. I wasted no time following him up the bank because it must have been something pretty serious to scare Travis, as he stands 6 feet tall and weighs over 220 pounds. As we climbed in the car, he was yelling about a giant ape-like figure that had porpoised, meaning it went under and then came back up out of the water and jumped. Probably like what we did when we're kids. You jump in the water, go down, leap up. But back to the report. Whatever it was, it must have been very large, judging by the sound that I heard and seeing that Travis was very wet from the splash that it had made. Several days later, the witness and Travis finally found the nerve to go back to the location, but again, their night fishing trip was cut short. He had an uneasy feeling as he started to cast from the bank. Then he heard the sound of a rock splashing into the water near the far bank. He thought that someone may have been playing a trick on him, so he was looking for the rock chucker when the following happened. That's when I heard it, a low, deep moan-like sound that turned into a high-pitched scream. I have been in the woods enough to know that there is no animal that could possibly make the noise that I had just heard. As I screamed for Travis, I felt reassured to see him already coming over to the bank asking what the hell made that noise. He couldn't even finish his sentence before that sound let loose again. It seemed to be on the opposite shore and running directly away from us at a speed I have never seen an animal run at before. It almost seemed like a bird, it was going so fast through the trees, directly away from us up the hill. It had seemed like seconds before it reached the top of the hill, maybe 1/8 of a mile away, and remained there for several minutes making a noise that had every hair on your entire body standing at perfect attention. Then, as quick as it had started, it stopped. Now, a few weeks later, the witness was again out on the river in the same area at night. This time, though, he was taking 2 clients, a local and a man from Iowa, on a guided nighttime drift boat trip. He didn't want to be out there, but it's a steelhead hotspot, and he wanted to get a few fish on the line for his clients. They were out on the river for a while when he hooked something, but it wasn't behaving like a steelhead. He let the Iowa client take the rod, watching the events unfold. In his report, he said, I couldn't help but feel confused about what could possibly be attached to the other end when it stood up in the middle of the river 30 feet below my boat and seemed by the glowing corkies and sand shrimp to be hooked in the left shoulder and not at all comfortable with the whole situation. Nor were either of the two gentlemen in the front of my boat. The Iowa guy was shouting something about it being a dead body, and I can't recall the local man saying anything at all. The river was about 4.5 feet deep where it was, and it seemed to me in the moonlight to be standing waist deep, slowly swinging its arms, trying to get free. The witness said that it took the creature 3 minutes to get free of the fishing line, and once it was free, it dove underwater, not coming back into view. He said that there was a bend about 100 yards away, so it would have had to go that distance before being able to stand without being seen. In the follow-up report by researcher Dr. Wolf H. Fehrenbach, the witness described repeated, unverified impressions of a Sasquatch swimming past the boat underwater. Dr. Fehrenbach didn't note if this was seen at this particular encounter or if this was one of those, aha, that's what it was back then, kind of things happening. What we do know is that these repeated encounters in such a short time period had a profound effect on the witness. He stopped fishing at Beginner's Hole, even though it's a steelhead hotspot, and he quit being a fishing guide as well. He said after these encounters, he started believing in Bigfoot. So one of the details that stands out in this report is that the witness went from having no encounters to having 3 in just a few weeks in the same area. The witness said in the report that a few years prior to his encounters, the woods had been closed to public entry for most of the season each year, about 90%, he said. This may have allowed the creatures to have a larger habitat range, and they may have stumbled upon this steelhead honey hole below the fish hatchery. And that may be why all of a sudden he's seeing a whole bunch of them here, because they're like, hey, there's food. And speaking of the area, if you look up Beginner's Hole on YouTube, a lot of the videos you'll see from the northern side of the shore. And what you'll see is a whole bunch of houses on the other side usually. And it seems to be just where people tend to film from. So when I first read this report, I was concerned that this was a river in basically a residential neighborhood, which could mean, a bunch of people causing trouble. So I decided to do a little bit more research on the area to figure out what the environment was like. How could these creatures be here if I'm seeing these houses out on the other bank? What you'll see here on the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, their water access sites, it shows Beginner's Hole right here. The fish hatchery is right here. And this is usually the houses that you're seeing in the images. Now, when you pull up a satellite image of this, you can see right here, this is Beginner's Hole. These are the houses, but once you look out here, oh, and here's the hatchery. But once you look out here, on both sides of this bank, you have got trees and trees and trees, and it just goes on and on and on and on. There is a lot of tree cover that they could hide under out here. So if you're looking up Beginner's Hole on YouTube, do not let the images deceive you. There's like maybe 10 houses right here, and that's about it. That's just the only houses there. Now, as for Bigfoot swimming, I went and looking online, and there are some reports about people witnessing Bigfoot swimming, and a common thread seems to be that they are swimming underwater. I didn't find any that talked about them doing the going down, jumping up, and leaping back out like a porpoise kind of deal, but I did find plenty about them swimming underwater. It seems like doing more of a breaststroke, or what some people call frog swimming, seems to be pretty common. But with the porpoising thing, I wouldn't be surprised. They're very good jumpers from what we hear from other reports. It would just be maybe a little bit more active in the water. Now, one thing that I'm wondering is, how do they fish? I mean, usually when people are fishing underwater, you can see them, they use spears or harpoons or some other fishing implement, but the report didn't mention about there being any spears. So do you think that the reason why they were able to use this location to fish would be because steelhead salmon coming upriver, they tend to move a little bit slower once they reach their mating grounds. We live pretty close to the American River, and I know that once the salmon are coming up to spawn, they're so slow. If I wanted to, I could like go out and scoop up a salmon and walk right out with it because they're just slowly moving up there. What do you guys think? I mean, do you think it's because of that, or do you think that they're just very fast swimmers and they're able to catch these steelhead out there? And why do you think that they're usually reported as swimming in the frog style or as a breaststroke? I mean, for me, when I go swimming, I usually do the backstroke. Other strokes I'm not as good at, but the breaststroke is absolutely okay. Actually, no, it's not quite my worst, but it's my second to worst stroke. But for most of these people that see them swimming, they're saying basically breaststroke. So why do you think that is? Why is it that that's their preferred mode of water locomotion? Do you think that it's because, like frogs, they've got some pretty large feet and it makes it very efficient? Or do you think that it's just easier for them to remain kind of in stealth mode under the water? So, have any of you experienced anything here at this location on the Kalama River, at Beginner's Hole or any of the nearby location there? And if you have, let us know in the comments below. I'd love to see what you have seen or heard out there. That'd be awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye!